everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk. I am your host, John, and this is the Let's Talk Review Show. This is the monthly show where I review movies for our channel directors and channel bankroll members. And today we got 4 movie reviews for you guys. We're going to be talking about Be Kind, Rewind, Wick is Pain, Terror Firmer, and Hobgoblins. And we're going to start it off with Mr. Smelly Potato's choice of Be Kind, Rewind, which came out in 2008. This one stars Mos Def and Jack Black. And I actually have a funny story about this movie because I remember in 2008 being in Florida on a vacation, seeing our grandparents. My cousin Dennis, who you guys see on the channel, my co-host of Original vs. Remake and the Let's Talk Morning Show. He was in Florida with me and my siblings, my parents at the time. Still my parents. What do you mean at the fucking time? Anyway, we were down in Florida and I wanted to go to the movies because I always wanted to go to the movies, but nobody else wanted to see anything that was in theaters. And the movie I really wanted to see was Be Kind, Rewind. So I was trying to sell people on this, like, hey, it's a video store kind of thing. They're going to be like remaking movies in their own way. I really wanted to see this film. It just looked like it was right up my alley. No one else wanted to go. So I had never seen it actually until Mr. Smelly Potato recommended it to me. And clearly Mr. Smelly Potato knows me very well because this is a movie that's right up my alley. There's so much heart in this film. It's a little bit, it's weird that this came out in 2008. This kind of feels like the movie that should have came out in like 2001, 2002, because it's a VHS store that needs to actually convert all their movies to DVD by that point. And it's 2008. By 2008, we already had Blu-ray and HD DVD, I think, was already dead. So to have movies being forced to transfer from VHS to DVD, I feel like in 2008, that should have already be done. So try and watch it through the prism of like 2001. It's just funny to me. It's 08. But anyway, Mos Def works at the store. He's the manager, really, while Danny Glover owns this store. It's a big part of the neighborhood. Mos Def obviously wants to be more than this, but he cares about Danny Glover. He's going to watch the store while he goes away. Unfortunately, Jack Black's a fuck up. He's his buddy though. He comes in there, he somehow gets like covered in like radiation. He makes himself magnetic, and because of that, he basically burns all of the VHSs in there because that's going to ruin the tape, that's going to ruin the film, and every single VHS is completely wiped clean. There's nothing on them. These people in this town obviously have never seen movies before, most of them, and I love watching that they're actually in a video store, and you can see all the old VHS box art. I'm like looking, trying to see. I see RoboCop in the background. I'm pointing all that out to myself because no one else cares. Now I'm just loving it. I'm loving all this stuff. And then of course they get the idea to remake these films themselves, like really get into guerrilla filmmaking. They're gonna remake Ghostbusters themselves, and it looks terrible. It looks cheap. But why do people end up liking these movies that are only like 20 minutes long? Because they care about the people making the movies. They care about their creativeness. They get put in a window. They have to make these movies really fast and really cheap, and because of that, they might look like shit, but there is so much heart in those kinds of movies. And that's what makes this movie stand out to me too, is just because of all the heart. And of course you get people like Ellen Burstyn from The Exorcist in this movie. Sigourney Weaver pops up towards the end of this film, which is great because one of the big movies that they're remaking is Ghostbusters. They're Ghostbusters. It's so popular. And they're remaking all of these great films, like I mentioned, RoboCop. So you get to see like their versions of it. And you love it. You care about the family, you care about the neighborhood. That's a big deal, and clearly like the director cares about that kind of stuff because he's the same guy who made Dave Chappelle's Block Party, and it's got that kind of like same passion like for the neighborhood. That's like a big deal, being a local celebrity. That's what these guys ends up becoming, but they don't ever really expand out of that. And sometimes I think that's part of the message of the movie. You don't have to. You can be creative with very little you have, and the message is great because not everything needs to strive to be these huge blockbusters. Sometimes a little movie with a lot of heart can go a long way. The movie itself, Be Kind, Rewind, is that kind of film, and those are the kinds of films that they are actually making in this movie. Mos Def and Jack Black are great. Mos Def, you know what? I've always kind of given him shit, but this is the movie that was kind of made for him. He's not really a true actor. He's obviously a rapper first, but you get Danny Glover in there and Jack Black, true actor, Sigourney Weaver, like Academy Award nominated actresses. Like it's incredible what you get in this film, and I highly recommend Be Kind, Rewind. I had an absolute blast with it. This is just something that really speaks to me, speaks to the creativeness in me, and I really enjoyed it. And I think if you're into one of those like kind of small little films, I think you'll really enjoy this one, even with the great performances in there. I think it's something that you should check out. I would give this one a very solid 9 out of 10. And one thing with all the movies this month is kind of all of them are kind of about the creation of like low budget films. And it's funny that Be Kind, Rewind's the first one we talked about, because then Kevin Kruger recommended to me Wick is Pain, which is the new documentary about the making of the John Wick franchise. And it goes into everything about how David Leitch and Chris Stahelski, the two guys who made the first John Wick. Chris Stahelski would go on to make the other three, while David Leitch went on to make other films such as Atomic Blonde and other films like that. But they, the two of them, they had a production company where they basically were hired as stuntmen, and because they were able to coordinate the entire films, they were hired to basically design all of the stunts for certain types of films. Before that, though, they were stuntmen themselves. I knew that Chris Stahelski was the stuntman for Brandon Lee in The Crow. I didn't realize how much of him is actually in The Crow, so I found all of that so interesting. Chris Stahelski was also the stunt double for Keanu Reeves on The Matrix, which I already knew, but to find out that's where their relationship really blossomed, and that's kind of why John Wick was really made to be, because Keanu Reeves was at a real low at that point. Chris Stahelski and David Leitch, they had never directed a film themselves, so they got a good low budget to go make this movie. Unfortunately, like I said, Keanu Reeves was really not in the highest regard at the time, and that includes me, because when John Wick first came out, I remember specifically not seeing it in theaters because I just wasn't really high on Keanu at the time, and I thought, okay, well, 47 Robin, which is funny, they bring this up in the movie. That movie was horrible. John Wick just feels like a direct-to-video movie, and they were reporting on that this was originally supposed to go directly to DVD or Blu-ray at the time, and no one really cared. And then I heard through the grapevine from people about the club scene in John Wick, and then I had to go check that movie out. And it just shows you how hard these movies are to make, and how these guys didn't really have a big budget for the first movie, never directed a film before, and you get a guy like Keanu Reeves just so laid back and so willing to do the work. And this documentary is just exploring all of that, and I love it, going through how the Kung Fu came to be and how it was in another movie before this with Jason Statham, but it wasn't quite perfected yet. Jason Statham wasn't really willing to play ball like Keanu Reeves was. Keanu Reeves always willing to do the work, and how the original John Wick was different from action movies at the time. And that's true. I remember when the first John Wick came out, shaky cam was all the rave, and I hated that. It was very hard to get into some action movies at the time, but this time they were keeping the camera still, moving with him. You can always see his face. That club scene is huge in the first John Wick movie, and then obviously they go into the sequels as well, and how those came to be. Why did the two directors decide not to work together anymore? Going through the drama of making the first film, and how they're friends, but they also would fight a lot. Love all that. They really leave no stone unturned. And as somebody who loves the filmmaking process, this documentary spoke right to me. I love making of documentaries. This is basically a feature-length making of the entire John Wick franchise, and I can highly recommend it. I think you can only rent it right now, but I think it's definitely worth your time. I don't want to spoil everything that you find out in there. Some stuff you probably have never heard before, like I have it, and I just found it absolutely interesting. Definitely recommend it. I would give this documentary a very solid 8.5 out of 10. So thank you very much, Kevin, for recommending to me Wick is Perfect.
God damn it, are you fucking with me?
I really do appreciate that. The next two films are from Uncle V and Frank from Frank's Media Reviews, and both of these are low-budget horror films. And I guess we'll talk about Uncle V's Terror Firmer first, which came out in 1998 or 1999, depending, directed by Lloyd Kaufman. This is a Troma film. Troma is most famous for The Toxic Avenger. Also, this is where James Gunn came out of. This is really where the bones of James Gunn can be found, and I always like to point that out to people, because when you watch movies like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, or you see people complaining about how Superman looks, and I'm like, that's James Gunn. If you know James Gunn, he's got a certain aesthetic to him, and it all comes from the school of Troma and Lloyd Kaufman and everyone over there. And Terror Firmer, there's plenty of Troma films that I haven't seen, but all the ones I have seen, I always really enjoy them. You have to be on board for what they are. I think the best one is still The Toxic Avenger, just because the plot is the most interesting in that. Sometimes these plots lose their way, but it's all about the creativeness of these movies. They're always very campy and very cheesy. They're also very gross and disgusting, but they know it. All the effects look bad, but they look bad on purpose. And this movie feels very much like Troma's version of Scream, is the best way I could put it, because it's a very self-aware movie. They're making a Toxic Avenger in this movie. It's a movie about making movies filtered through Troma, and they're making a new Toxic Avenger movie. They never directly say it, but they call him Toxie and Toxie and everything. And one of the characters just really wants to play that. That's his absolute love. The guy who's doing the effects. I think he's not even getting paid for it. All these performances are very over exaggerated and disgusting. The outcome of this movie is just absolutely ridiculous. It's foreshadowed so much. These movies can be offensive to some people, but I think because they're just so over the top and cheesy and campy, that they're not as offensive as movies like a Serbian film, or even Uncle V recommended Necromantic. Those I think are going for complete shock. Troma always knows what Troma is. It's never trying to be anything more than that. And Terror Firmer is absolutely a love letter to Troma itself from Troma for its fans. I mean, it's even got some beautiful shots in this movie. There's like looking at New York City in the background. Like, that's beautiful, even though it's like in shitty VHS quality, the way to watch this movie. But again, that's all stuff that's part of the charm of Troma, and all that's a part of Terror Firmer. And I think that's why Terror Firmer really does work as a film. Like, again, yeah, like if you put this on and you're like thinking you're going into like a regular like kind of movie like Scream, don't expect that at all. This is very much a Troma film, kind of making its own Scream film. You know, this is right after Scream 1 and 2 had come out, so it's trying to be very self-aware, but it's just very silly and very stupid, but I loved it. I really did. I had a great time watching this. This would probably be already my second favorite Troma film behind The Toxic Avenger. I had a blast watching it. Just know what you're getting into with this kind of movie. If you've ever seen a Troma film before, you should be aware. If you never have, and this is your first one, I don't think you'll really appreciate it that much. This is definitely something that's going to reward the Troma fans. And thank you, Uncle V, because this is definitely the best film that Uncle V has recommended to me to watch here on the channel. He sent us originally way back in the day Tromeo and Juliet, which is a great film as well. But I do think that this one is even better than that. So I can definitely recommend this one. If I was going to rate this film on a score of 1 to 10, I'm going to give this one a pretty solid 8 out of 10. And then the last film on this list is Hobgoblins, and this was recommended from Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews, and when I thanked him for it, he said, "Don't thank me yet." And I was like, okay, that's not a great sign, but this film came out in 1988, and it's basically just a ripoff of Gremlins, but in the best way possible, because yeah, this one clearly has no budget at all. The goblins themselves, they're just puppets, and they're puppets that don't blink, don't do anything. There's one scene in the movie where the guy is interacting with it, and you know he's the one doing all of the movement. He's moving this thing around. He's doing the best he can. This is an extremely low budget horror film with some horrible effects. But is it still good? Yeah, this is one of those movies that it's so bad it's good, because the dialogue is cheesy and horrible. None of these people can act good at all. What's the plot of this movie anyway? Well, a lot like Gremlins. These things, except these are goblins that are already goblins, they live inside of a vault, and the guy who runs the security gate at this company, he knows about them. He tried to tell people about them, but no one believes him, so they still just live there. But he makes sure that they don't get out for the safety of the community. And then one day, they have to hire another security guard, because the guy who's the head of this business, by the way, is always talking about the insurance. It comes up from beginning to end. The only thing he ever talks about is he has to make sure nobody breaks in just because of the insurance. He's so worried about the insurance. The insurance talk is absolutely hysterical. But again, they are just such bad actors. Everybody, it just always comes off so corny. But again, in a good way. But of course, what ends up happening, these goblins end up getting out into the streets. They have no money, so all their locations are just absolutely horrible. Only like 1 or 2, 3 people there. Anytime a car's driving, you try and have that only in focus, because it's just like black backgrounds, and the best they can do with the money that they had. These goblins can also possess your mind to make you think you're seeing something you're not, which just leads to a great scene in the middle of the movie. And another thing, this movie's not very long, but they just have overextended scenes for like 3 or 4 minutes where they should have cut that down. Like, they have a whole song playing throughout, like literally an entire music moment that could have just been completely cut from the movie, but they're clearly trying to pad this movie, and I don't know why. Just shoot more of whatever you got, but I guess they really had no money. And those scenes, those are just kind of boring, so you don't even really necessarily need them. But those cheesy scenes with the actual goblins, all that stuff really works. The main guy, who running the guard booth, at least he's kind of trying to play, and he's playing the role very, very funnily. It just doesn't work entirely, even, but again, you're trying to watch a movie here that it's so bad while you're watching it, so you're not trying to poke those holes, because again, they're just very, very, very obvious flaws. This one I watched on Tubi. Very much the kind of movie you discover on Tubi. It's in the same vein as Killer Clowns from Outer Space, just with absolutely no money. If you would have told me that these guys shot this with a camcorder, a stick of gum, and just a few random guys that they found, I would believe it. But that doesn't take away from the charm of this movie. And like we're talking about in movies like Be Kind, Rewind, it's all about the creativeness and making the best of what you have. And I think that they really did. I think there was some passion put into this movie. That doesn't make the movie good, but that still means that there was some passion put into this movie. There's clearly people who care about it. Yeah, it's a Gremlins ripoff, but it's still pretty damn enjoyable. It's one of those movies, it is so bad it's good, and I can recommend it. If I was going to give Hobgoblins a score of 1 to 10, I'll give this one, we'll shoot it right down the middle. We'll give this one a solid 5 out of 10. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it here for me on another episode of the Let's Talk Review Show. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video if you could. We also have channel memberships, so if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel like John Doe Juggalo and Ben Rondo, you could do that. Or if you want to become a channel director like Frank from Frank's Media Reviews, Nicholas Head, Uncle V, and Kevin Kruger, you could do that and have your choice review each and every month. Or you can become a channel bankroll member like Mr. Smelly Potato, have your own choice review every single month, and then every other month you'll even have your own choice video. But of course, if you got no money to throw away, guys, don't worry about it all. I just hope you enjoy the video. And if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.